And I guess I'll start my intro. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Agile Expertise and Leading in an Agile World. I'm super excited today to introduce you and, introduce our host who will be talking today, Giles Lindsay. He is a very good friend and a real expert in the realms of leading and agile. And he's got very many different war wounds, I guess. His experience is immense.
Thanks for that.
I think you've really been in the trenches, I think. So, yeah, I'm not going to kind of hog this space. Giles, I'm going to hand it straight over to you. And if you want to give yourself a little bit of an intro too, it's right over to you.
Look, thanks, Chantal. And hey, everyone, and welcome to my talk on what I believe is now the hottest day of the year so far. As Chantal mentioned, I'm Giles, and this talk is going to be all about the challenges of agile leadership and obviously some of those war wounds I've suffered. Before I begin, I genuinely hope that everyone at the meetup tonight is safe and well during this crazy, difficult time, and obviously is as cool as possible as well. While I only have cold water, I hope others have cold beers or glasses of wine, because that will certainly help right now. I'm very humbled that I have the opportunity to talk to you all during this lockdown period and share all of these sort of musings with you all. This is certainly a unique experience, not having sort of spoken to this number of people online, normally doing it in person. So thank you ever so much to Chantal for arranging this evening and arranging everybody to join and see the talk. So tonight's talk stems from my experiences, successes, failures, I'll use Chantal's phrase, war wounds, leading agile adoptions over the last 10 years plus. I'll specifically be highlighting certain common challenges that agile champions and leaders frequently face in the workplace when trying to create an environment which allows agile to succeed, which somehow still creates the most amount of friction within our jobs daily. I'm also very lucky and humbled to have members of several previous and current agile families here tonight supporting me. You know who you are, along with my wife, who's sat over there, who is also an agile coach in her day job. You can imagine what our conversations over dinner are like. Joke, dear. I'm also very humbled to see other agile speakers and leadership champions attending tonight too, plus other amazing coaches from recent courses I have attended. Thank you very much for being here, for helping, guiding and teaching and supporting. I can't thank you all enough. It can only be a positive thing to help get the message out along with so many others to our community and places of work. I'm very passionate about responsible leadership in the workplace, and those who know me certainly know that. And I've spent the last few years trying to give back to our community by sharing learnings, mistakes, and telling stories of the importance of having the right leadership from the top down. I also believe that now more than ever, as we spend so much of our time with new ways of working due to the COVID lockdown, that we need agile leadership to be as successful as possible to help make our organizations succeed. So the purpose of this talk is to look at some of the challenges that are limiting agile leadership from being truly successful in the workplace. In understanding what and where agile leadership needs to be in 2020 and beyond, we need to understand where agile may be perceived to be today as it enters its third decade in the workplace. I often share these thought-provoking perceptions that are from both those inside and outside the Agile community at talks like this to see how they match to the experience of the experts in the audience today. So, how is it currently being perceived? As a cult or ideology, as the goal, as just about doing and not about being Agile, as being too prescriptive and bureaucratic, as possibly being fake, as only about implementing parts of the process, a tool for software development only, all about scaling and brands and methodologies and transformations and all those other amazing agile buzzwords. As the whole answer, as a tick in the box exercise, just about qualifications, or even possibly as Agile theatre? I'm here this evening to share some of the things I've repeatedly experienced in my career that limit the success of Agile leadership in the workplace. And this is going to be a real opportunity for us all to collaborate and help get our organizations overcome these hurdles to become genuinely more Agile. Next, I want to share questions I ask on arrival whenever I join a new company. So, questions I ask on arrival. Are we entering into the adoption for the right reasons? Do we understand the why? Are we implementing a way of working within which our Agile teams can actually flourish? And does our organizational leadership behave with an Agile mindset and not just with Agile words? Do we have top-down, and I would even say bottom-up buy-in to the adoption of our Agile processes in the workplace? Is our organization operating in silos or as a system with synergies? Do we have the right set of building blocks for our desired agility level? Are our Agile successes being limited by the culture? And finally, is our Agile leadership fully supported throughout the organization? And after this, I really would like to find out what other things people are thinking or people are asking when they join organizations as well. To understand why we need Agile leadership, we need to understand why organizations want to become Agile in the first place. So I'm going to begin with why these same organizations actually aspire to be Agile. Previous surveys by Deloitte and McKinsey show that more than 90% of senior management and technology organizations are giving a high priority to the mandate of making these same organizations Agile. Popularity of this way of working today clearly shows that modern day Agile approaches deliver superior results compared to those of traditional approaches. And this is where that aspirational mandate is being driven from. But despite this, less than 10% actually consider their organization to be performing with a high level of agility. According to a McKinsey Global Agile survey, more than 80% of respondents say their organizations have undertaken digital transformation initiatives over the past 5 years. A mere 16%, though, reported a success. And even worse than that, 3% claimed successful, sustained transformation. Now, the results from respondents who did report a success, the 16%, point to 5 categories in order of importance, all of which make a transformation more likely to succeed. And as we see here, they are leadership, capability building, empowering workers, upgrading tools, communication. These categories suggest where and how organizations like ours can start to improve their chances of successfully making major step changes to their business. So this seemingly large delta between aspiration and reality has led to many organizations today claiming to be Agile in one form or another, when clearly they are not. Especially if, according to their results, they do not have the right leadership in place to help bring about the required changes to improve on that 3% score. What is Agile leadership? Now, I don't want to focus a large part of this talk on this particular topic, but I do want to share what I believe Agile leadership is today, who an Agile leader may be, and some of the attributes that I think make a great leader. Wherever you are on your Agile journey, Agile leadership, firstly, is the practice of creating change that helps build a truly Agile organization. Agile leaders will have a passion for learning, open innovation, developing people, and can create and communicate the vision of the organization. It is also the craft of creating the right context for self-organization within an environment where teams collaborate, learn from each other, get quick feedback from users, and are focused on quality and continuous learning. These leaders do not micromanage the people nor create total freedom. They balance the anarchy and strict structure that is crucial in today's organizations. Developing, and probably more importantly, maintaining this right environment is often very hard work. These leaders focus on principles such as designing and improving the culture, facilitating teams to take ownership, coaching these teams to understand the agile mindset, promoting and learning and feedback from experiments as well as failures, and co-creating long-term goals with the teams so that they know what they are aiming to achieve. Additionally, these agile leaders have to operate well in a wide range of circumstances, especially new, changing, challenging, and often ambiguous situations. So who in an organization is an agile leader? Think of the role of the agile leader as a placeholder for whatever you decide to call the role. It may depend somewhat on your organization and how you organize your work accordingly. An agile leader, for example, could be a coach, a senior executive, a product owner, even a project manager. Yes, I said it. A scrum master, a release engineer, a coordinator, etc., etc. You don't necessarily need to go out and hire someone specifically as an agile leader within your organization. You may already have many agile leaders. But for whoever is in this position, it is a critical function and it needs to be a key part of an organization for any complex cross-functional endeavor that involves more than a handful of teams. The person or persons in that role needs to be motivated, dedicated, and skilled. Now, the reason I say persons is that the agile leader doesn't necessarily need to be one person. It can be a pair or a small close-knit team, as long as they collaborate tightly and speak with one voice. While it seems very obvious, these agile leaders need to not only be strategic, but also to effectively lead in the present to address any issues or challenges the team may be currently facing. Agile leaders must also inspire creativity and innovation within employees so that as the organization moves forward, employees are directly contributing to its successes. You can't always rely on what worked yesterday to solve tomorrow's problems. So agile leaders need to use their experience as a tool, but mustn't rely on it solely to solve problems. Agile leaders take pride in being resilient and creative in what they accomplish by ultimately being flexible and open to change. Agile leaders are those who can adapt to an ever-changing and uncertain environment. Learning from this prepares them to handle whatever happens next and makes them an excellent role model for others. Agile leaders constantly challenge beliefs and assumptions so they can meet the needs of the moment versus clinging onto a cause that is perhaps already lost. And finally, agile leaders need to navigate uncharted waters, ambiguity, and chaos on a daily basis, all the while remaining fully connected with the team or teams. Regardless of who is performing the role within the organization, agile leadership has an effect on that same organization at two distinct levels: the structural level and the behavioral level. Now, on the structural level, agile leadership affects all things like processes, roles, responsibilities, KPIs, etc., etc. And on the behavioral side, it refers to specific actions taken by those agile leaders in certain situations that are underpinned by particular mindsets and abilities. So taken together, structural and behavioral effects mutually reinforce each other and culminate in a leadership experience that extends its influence across the entire organization. Now, talking of influence, the following points for me are key to understanding the role of the agile leader. So, leaders and managers both mobilize people and resources and explain the vision. But that's where a lot of the similarities end. Leaders focus on goals, managers focus on tasks. Leaders take risks, managers mitigate risks. Leaders sell it, managers tell it. Leaders go against the grain, managers go with the flow. Leaders motivate, managers approve. Leaders inspire trust, managers expect control. Leaders foster ideas, managers assign tasks. Leaders innovate, and managers use what works. Michael Sahota also recently wrote, I think it was a blog post last year, anyone can be an agile leader. It's about how we show up and what we value. It's not about a formal role, such as a manager. So now we're going to try something new at this meetup tonight. Chantal and I thought it'd be fun to use the Zoom breakout room feature and group ourselves into small numbers of people and discuss the following question for the next 10 minutes or so to see what we can learn from one another. Does genuine agile leadership exist in 2020? And if not, what do you think is stopping it? So back over to Chantal.
Thanks, Giles. That was really interesting so far. Okay, so I've not used this tool before, so please bear with me if I do mess it up. I hope I don't. It should be intuitive. I've seen Judy do it, and she did it quite seamlessly.
Sorry to interrupt you, just a thing. When you break the rooms, it usually takes a certain amount of time to people to be in those rooms. So if it takes some time, it's not because it's not working.
Got it. Thank you. That's great, Anna. Thank you for that tip. I think it's going to be in groups of 5. Is there anybody in this room that doesn't want to go into a breakout room, or is everyone happy to form into groups? I assume that means everyone's happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just double checking. Okay, right. So I'm going to create 7 rooms. So it's going to be about 4 or 5 participants per each room. So yeah, off we go. Okay, here we go.
This.
There we go. Join. Good stuff.
Well, that was exciting. Hi, Elaine. Hi, Femi. Hi, Nick. Hi, Benny. Hi, Zora.
What I see is that a genuine agile leadership is not there. Hi, Sheetal. Is not there in many organizations. I see a lot of managers, but not leadership. This is 2 different things completely. So my opinion is that in 2020, yes, from what it has been before, there has been a lot of improvements, and it is coming, evolving, but still a lot needs to be improved. I would say across organizations. That is my opinion. I don't know what. So Chris, Jeff, what are your thoughts? Do you think it is there, or? For me, I feel like there is still a lot more to improve. Though organizations claim that they are agile, maybe they might be doing daily stand-up, Scrum ceremonies, etc. But with respect to mindset, I feel that companies still have to evolve a lot in terms of mindset and mentality. That is my opinion. Now over to Chris and JF.
You want to go next, Jeff?
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Oh, that is such a lovely team. We are all giving chance. That's so nice team. Yeah, go for it, Chris.
Well, my thought and my experience is that, Agile is a philosophy. It's a journey, and we can aspire to get better in terms of listening to the customer and getting feedback. So I think there's a lot of kind of tools and practices out there, frameworks that get us going in the right direction. But in a reorganization, it's always tempered by the business objectives, because Agile itself isn't what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get a product out of the door, and so Agile just helps with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Chris. And I think to add to that, I would say that Agile is just the way of getting that product out the door. But it's actually the how, isn't it, Chris? So it's the strategy around how you're going to get it out the door. And it's that fear being, we're not going to take a whole entire product and build it in a small space of time and put it out there. We're going to actually build products in parts, and then we're going to put it out there. And I think from a leadership perspective, that can be quite nerve-wracking. So, I mean, yeah, what do you guys think of that?
100%.
From the perspectives I that I've heard, all of us are correct in that we bring different perspectives. It's all about this, it's all about that. But I have a big problem with agile transformations in and of itself, because there is one thing about agile transformations that very few people answer. And that thing is, when does an agile transformation end? And my opinion is it never ends. And interestingly enough, I blogged about this yesterday and I posted it on my website. It never ends. And so I agree, the impetus for going agile is about product delivery, right? But as product delivery teams start going faster and start interacting with the rest of the organization, then the rest of you will get slowed down by these other parts of the organization, right? So because the teams will now be slowed down by the other parts of the organization, that means they need to become more agile. But how do you apply agile to areas like finance, HR, marketing? And so there's that problem that I see with a lot of these transformations, in that leaders think there is an endpoint. And to me, it is not an endpoint. Agile transformations is just the beginning, because you will be constantly evolving. Because as you get your product teams to deliver, you will encounter more problems that even most Agilists today still don't have the answers to, right? So for instance, with Agile HR, we're starting to see a community for people who may not have heard of it. There's the agilehrcommunity.com, which is based out of Europe. And they do webinars and talks about how bring Agile into HR and bring HR into Agile, right? So there is that aspect as well. So it's all these questions. So there is some leadership, but you also need to understand that the question differs depending on where in the leadership hierarchy you go. Because you're not going to talk about Scrum or Kanban at the CEO level.
No.
What you're going to talk about at the CEO level is how fast can your organization adapt as an entire company, especially to input from things like the pandemic, which we have today, or an announcement by your competitor. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, you tend to see the bigger picture and see that Agile is just the beginning, the stuff that you do with your product delivery teams. And then you start to butt into the problems with the rest of the organization, and you need to fix those as well. Or else, the saying that I've heard and used is, you will be as agile as your slowest department in your company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's where I think it happens.
That's really interesting, and so true. I mean, if it's like you say, there actually is no end. It's a change.
Yes.
What you're doing is you're changing,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that change incorporates, your new way of working, which is agile. So departments like finance, marketing, and HR, if they want to actually, so there's a mindset shift that has to happen in those departments as well.
Correct.
And they have to think differently about the way they're working, and they need to align themselves. That is a big beast of a job. Possible, 100% possible. I mean, we do planning sessions, and we budget against the plan in 12-week windows.
Yep.
That big
Exactly.
annual budget's out the window. Doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to be anymore, right?
Yeah.
And even Agile in and of itself, because the first time I tried Agile was back in 1998. This was even before Scrum and Kanban were coined as terms, right? And the Scrum I did in 1998 is radically different than the Scrum I do today with my teams, right? So Agile also evolves, and so because of that, your company also evolves, and it has to encompass everyone. And leadership needs to understand that it's not just your delivery teams. It is the entire company if you really want to be truly agile. You can define an endpoint, right? But you won't really be truly agile if that endpoint is defined.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I'm so
Because-
sorry. I'm going to have to stop you there. It's 19.
Totally understand.
Sorry, but that was really interesting. I'd love to pick up this conversation afterwards with you if you've got time.
Sure, more than happy to. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you on the
Thank
other side.
you.
Thank you, Sheetal.
Thank you.
Sheetal, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was a bit of a confusion for me. I ended up in the room where nobody wanted to join. I was just like wondering why no one was interacting. Sorry, everyone. Everyone back? I think everyone's back.
Yep, and I think you may have to just give me back presenter mode again, just temporarily, so I can share my screen.
Yep. Okay. I'll let the others guys back in as well. They're all in the waiting room somehow. Okay, where are you, Giles? More make host. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, there's a few more just joining again. And Giles, it's back over to you.
It says Benny is the host now.
Sorry, Benny. I think when people were coming back in.
So Benny, do you have some slides prepared?
Benny, would you mind making Giles host, please?
Hi, Sheetal. Sorry, I'm switching devices.
Okay.
Can you admit my second?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Of course. I think it'll have to be Giles that admits you when he's got host.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll give it back to you, Sheetal, as soon as we've done it like last time. But Benny needs to give it to me now.
Say no thanks. There we go. Thank you, Benny.
Okay. So I'm back. And I'm going to go to participants. And Sheetal, I'm going to give you back make host.
I don't know if that's a good idea, but okay.
There you go. And it should be that I still can present.
Yep, can see you fine.
All right, awesome. Look, I mean, a bit of fun, yes. First time we've been able to do something like this. So, you know, great. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a lot of fun. I know I had a great conversation with a new friend from California. So we are truly international in what we're actually trying to do today. So that is actually quite amazing. All right, now moving on. I want to obviously now discuss the challenges. As I do often at meetups and conferences on topics I'm passionate about, I like to share the most common, most often experienced and possibly hardest challenges that I see or face at the most amount of times in my career. That are limitations and blockers for me in my quest for being an agile leader and I suppose enabling agility the best way possible throughout the organization I'm working in. Now, I'm not necessarily providing solutions for these, but I'm going to share and highlight the challenges and some of the things that we as leaders can do to limit them, which you will see follow a well-trodden path of recurring patterns, which then become opportunities for us all as an agile community to help truly solve them together. Now, I'll explain more about that at the end of the talk, and I hope none of the challenges that I'm going to talk about are new to any of the agile leaders or champions here tonight. And I bet a lot of you have suffered from some or all of these at some point, or you may be suffering and experiencing them right now. So challenge number one, where organizations wrongly claim to be agile. The term agile is often applied to organizations or parts of that have no substantive claim to any kind of agility whatsoever. This usage wrongly leads to many organizations being called agile, even though they are still managed through traditional bureaucracy without any agile leadership. This over-eagerness to self-identify as agile has created fake agile among organizations that misunderstand or simply choose to ignore the true application of agility. To understand whether an organization is agile, you have to look beyond what they are saying and look at how they are operating. Some of the most successful organizations that have implemented an agile way of working don't even use the standard terminology of agile, or even worry about calling themselves agile at all. This is also known as agile without the label. Their business agility, coupled with great leadership, is an important reason why they have become the most valuable organizations in the world. The uncomplimentary phrase, agile in name only, applies to organizations that are only implementing parts of the agile processes, but without embracing the agile philosophy and values, more on that later, which is shared and embodied by the agile leaders. To avoid uncomfortable scrutiny, some organizations may even cover themselves in agile camouflage, borrowing the ceremonies and vernacular of agile methods and frameworks without fundamentally changing their underlying work habits or having the correct leaders in place to change this. Simply, these organizations are doing agile without truly being agile. As mentioned earlier, this claim by organizations calling themselves agile can never be genuine if they do not have the right leadership, sharing that agile philosophy and set of values, enabling the required change and evolution. I recently worked in an organization that was claiming exactly this when I joined, and yet it was nearly impossible to hire the agile leaders or coaches to enable true change to happen. As if they had given themselves the moniker and didn't want to actually do any more than that. To be truly agile, an organization needs to operate in a very different way, with leadership, values, and norms all reinforcing the philosophy and culture. If you're an agile leader coming into an organization that is resisting change and operating by doing agile in name only, this is a substantial challenge to overcome. It may even be impossible. Challenge number 2, where agile is for the software teams only. The Agile Manifesto and corresponding principles were originally written for the context of software development and was intended to address issues that software teams faced in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The fact that the wording of the manifesto is limited to software development is less than adequate as a definition of business or organizational agility now in 2020, meaning that there is still a need for the manifesto to evolve further. When agile processes are introduced, or even sometimes forced upon software teams in traditionally managed organizations, without the right coaching or leadership, they inevitably run into conflict with other parts of the business that have much more bureaucracy and are certainly less flexible to change. Because that most widely shared definition of agile is all about software development, senior management often become confused asking, isn't agile for software only? Too often, the non-agile leaders of an organization undergoing a change or evolution or transformation or whatever you and your organization call it, think that all that's involved is the software teams learning a new framework. As an agile leader, I've had to coach many senior managers on agile foundation courses to help them understand what it's truly about. Therefore, understanding the agile philosophy and being able to manifest those agile values at all business levels is critical for the agile leader to help build and grow that truly agile organization. In arriving at this software-only perception, without the right leadership and approach in place, agile often ends up as just a couple of pieces of the process thrown and cobbled together. Maybe some sprints for some development purposes, and especially with no adoption within the rest of the organization. Often intensifying the idea that agile is simply the coding part, which senior managers believe don't require other elements, departments, and actors involved in the overall process. This again creates a version of fake agile within that organization and limits the idea that agile actually refers to the ability of that organization to rapidly respond to change and to continuously improve. If you're an agile leader brought into this kind of environment that is unaware it needs to change or is simply resisting it, you need to find ways and try different approaches to enable agility throughout the whole enterprise and not only just have it working for the software teams, to ultimately remove large parts of this organizational friction. Now, this can be achieved by things like systemic coaching, sharing the why, learning from other organizations, introducing communities of practice, finding your organizational champions, and even creating those right ways of working, as well as possibly introducing other organizational changes, like beyond budgeting for finance departments, and transforming human resources departments into people management teams, and having them potentially lead the organizational change. Now, I have a personal hang-up with the phrase human resources. For me, it categorizes us all in the same way as office resources or hardware resources. There will be many other items we can add to this list, and I would love to hear offline from those who have successful approaches to applying agility throughout their organizations. And I would love to also hear about approaches that haven't worked as well. The idea that Agile should operate across the entire organization, aka business agility, can only be a positive thing. I hope everyone agrees. The Agile business can then be more adaptive, flexible, creative, resilient when dealing with complexity, uncertainty, and change, leading to improved well-being and better outcomes. Challenge number 3, where Agile is disliked by the command and control gang, something we were talking about in our breakout room. What's annoying about Agile to control-minded management at any level within an organization, but especially prevalent with middle or senior middle management in my personal experience, is that it recognizes a very big problem lies in control itself, especially when this gang worships at the altar of conformance and are not flexible to adapt and change. Reconciling Agile execution and innovation lies in giving greater freedom to those doing the work, being able to exercise their talents and creativity, but doing so within short cycles so they themselves can see whether they are making progress or not. Even worse for hierarchical control, Agile leadership thrives on transparency. One of the dirty, not so little secrets of traditional middle management is that control thrives on non-transparency, especially when they follow the ideology of controlism from the top down. So introducing Agile leadership means exposing all those non-transparent tricks that hierarchical managers play on their subordinates to maintain power. Is it any wonder then that Agile leadership isn't naturally popular with the command and control gang, and as such will not succeed if they do not allow it to flourish within the organization? There have been many well-documented situations where an Agile transformation or evolution didn't deliver the expected improvements. You can just Google it and find an absolute plethora of them. Or even failed and was ultimately stopped because of the involvement of this gang. Those who don't pliantly follow this group become an obstacle in their mind and not a benefit. With such defenders of controlism, who needs enemies? When advocating a new approach or way of working, it's natural to openly highlight the flaws of the current ways of doing things. If everything were perfect, why should people listen to any of us? This is where the biggest friction comes from. Agile leaders and coaches have suggested many ways to deal with organizations that have a command and control management style. For example, by assessing if an organization is truly ready or not for Agile in the first place. These same leaders also need to be wary of the damage from anti-Agile propaganda from this group, which will also limit the success of any adoption. If an organization genuinely wants Agile and its leadership to succeed, then the hardest lesson for this command and control gang is learning to trust the talented people and Agile leaders, then recognizing when to get out of their way. It's down to us all to help guide and coach the best way possible to allow this to happen and to help remove that resistance to change. Challenge number 4, where Agile is constrained by bureaucracy. One thing hasn't changed with the popularity of Agile. There's still loads of pressure from the top down. In an ideal organization, C-levels should transform and promote the changes too. I should know being one. And I have worked with some amazing technology leaders and mentors who have done just this. However, in many companies today, it's still not the case, especially ones I and colleagues here this evening have worked in, where they revert back to the only processes they know, believing that they somehow understand how to deliver better than those Agile leaders who look after the teams daily. One author, Gary Hamel, gave a vivid description of bureaucracy and this top-down pressure in a Harvard Business Review article titled "Bureaucracy Must Die," that summed it up as: strategy gets set at the top, power trickles down, big leaders appoint little leaders, individuals compete for promotion, compensation correlates with rank, tasks are assigned, managers assess performance, rules tightly circumscribe discretion. So as such, these same executives are focusing on snapping their fingers, trying to become agile magically, also known as the Harry Potter syndrome, often without any care or understanding why, and hoping for a faster time to market, which ultimately never comes for them or anyone else. Senior management, and note I do not call them senior leadership here, often doesn't understand what Agile actually is, and sometimes don't even want to understand. I recently had a rather ignorant line manager who used to say of me in the Agile way of working to others, "What is that Agile thing you do?" even if I told him 20 times a week. I once even got an apology from the people he was talking to in a large meeting after he had said it and walked away. This same group sometimes mistakenly think it's some new kind of anti-bureaucracy or voodoo, associating it with a lack of control or management, a chaotic free-for-all, if you like, with no plan. Or they believe they will lose control of the products and not be able to make changes to them as and when they see fit. Senior management often experiences friction with new ways of working, often due to a lack of education given of the journey being taken, or a lack of coaching to understand the why, or a lack of trust of the people who are responsible to deliver, or even simply just down to a general resistance to change. Wrongly thinking it may cost too much to implement, often due to the need of required roles to deliver successfully, even after they have streamlined teams to begin with. Or losing sight of the real goal, which is achieving successful business outcomes, not simply doing Agile as some sort of tick-in-a-box exercise to say the company is now Agile. Big reveal moment. It's not all their fault, however. A fundamental issue for senior management is that the standard Agile vocabulary, born from the foundations of Agile with frameworks like Scrum, was devised purposefully to be unattractive to this same management group. Unfortunately, one thing all Agile leaders and coaches have to be very mindful of is that these same frameworks have offered little or zero guidance to those people who actually have to change the most. We, as an Agile community, at times, seem to have completely missed the fact that the people who need the most coaching and support are those senior managers who are in charge. It seems crazy to believe, but I've only seen this being openly discussed for the last few years. Yet we've been working in Agile ways for nearly 20 years. Did we all hope this friction would simply disappear, or were we, including myself, wearing blinkers the whole time? Because of a lack of support and education for this group, iterative change has become so fast with our Agile ways of working that big hierarchical bureaucracies cannot cope. And in turn, that means senior management cannot cope with the pace of Agile either. Sending commands up and down the management ladder is simply too slow and cumbersome and causes further friction if not managed properly by agile leaders and coaches. The voice of the customer is often lost in the battles up and down this same management ladder, with those at the top being so far removed from the customer and the work being done to even truly know what is going on, let alone understanding how to respond to it. They fixate on wanting to change things like culture, but not in an agile way, and producing 50-page IT roadmaps that'll be out of date in 3 months, without understanding that they need to change first of all and become supportive of what is going on already. If organizations are not careful, these new agile ways of working can wrongly become rediverted into yet another company reorganization, driven by the same senior management wanting to get control back over what is happening in the organization, creating even further change fatigue and making it less likely to succeed, being part of the 97% statistic I mentioned at the start. I've heard people talk of the soul of a department being ripped out with changes like this, especially when the agile leaders are let go. This invariably wrongly leads to a negative way of organizing, a woo, instead of a positive way of working, a wow, and will create even further friction within an agile adoption and make it far less likely to succeed. I think the cartoon really sums it up. Who wants change? Who wants to change? Now, also, the Business Agility Report 2019 preface stated that the report is a sobering account of the obstacles along the way, particularly in larger organizations that suffer from risk-averse cultures, organizational silos, bureaucratic layers, workforce passivity, traditional mindsets, and above all, lack of strongly supportive leadership at the top. This resolutely maps back to the results of the McKinsey survey I mentioned at the start, to make any adoption, transformation, whatever you call it, a success. You need that right leadership in place. The hard truth today, however, is that agile and traditional bureaucratic management still don't get along, and we all need to work harder to change this. In repeated polls of people working in many different organizations where agile is being implemented, somewhere between 70 to 90% reported tension between the way agile teams are run, and the way the rest of the organization is managed. Agile leadership throughout an organization is a lot harder than traditional leadership. If you're doing it right, you care a whole lot more. Often these agile leaders are the filter between harsh top-level objectives and truly trying to motivate their teams, making a difference and enabling delivery. Agile leaders must help organization and those senior managers understand that it's not a new level of anti-bureaucracy and that they will not lose control of their products, and understand that they need to help coach the senior management team to understand what it is they are committing to, which is, I believe, is a quote from Deming. They must also ensure they're providing the guidance required and advising the senior managers of the approaches being taken by the teams, bringing them on the same journey. And finally, they need to be part of the success criteria to help senior managers to ultimately become senior leaders. An agile leader is by necessity someone who lives and models this agile mindset, i.e., someone who is pragmatic, knowledgeable, flexible, open, respectful, and responsive, not prescriptive and bureaucratic. So this leads very nicely on to our last challenge, challenge number 5, where organizations have a fixed or traditional mindset. As discussed earlier, organizations that are very agile often shy away from the label agile, or are moving away from a particular brand and are using their own homegrown words, which feels a whole lot more genuine. The main difference between those organizations that can claim to be truly agile and those that can't is for a large part down to those adopting an agile mindset at its core, from its people and culture to its structure and technology, i.e. being agile and not just simply doing agile. Those leaders that adapt to the continuum of agile will see improvements over time versus those leaders that don't adapt due to their fixed mindset, where they go through the motions of just doing agile daily because of some wider directive. If this mindset adoption doesn't happen, then that company culture will never improve or change, even if senior management somehow bizarrely think it'll be just fine the way it is. As some people in organizations wrongly believe, an agile mindset does not simply see things in a polarized view, i.e. agile or not. An agile mindset is actually that set of attitudes that support a truly agile working environment. These will include things like respect, collaboration, improvement in learning cycles, pride in ownership, focusing on delivering value, courage and experimentation, and the ability to adapt and change. This mindset is necessary for agile leaders to cultivate those high-performing teams who in turn deliver amazing value for their customers. This mindset is also independent of terminology, labels, specific proprietary processes, or particular agile brands, and helps with fixing the perception of whether an organization can truly claim to be agile or not. If this mindset is cultivated by the leaders and nourished, the teams will experience amazing outcomes. Happy employees delivering great value and great results. Ultimately, Agile is all about embracing that different mindset or philosophy. Agile is not a system, not a methodology, not a platform, not an organizational structure. In my experience, when people and organizations have the right leaders and mindset, it hardly matters what tools, processes, and practices they are using. It just simply makes things come out right. Conversely, if they don't have the right leaders and mindset, it doesn't matter if they're implementing every tool and process and practice according to the book. No benefits will flow. And again, I've experienced this more often than not. The Agile mindset is the environment within which teams truly flourish, enabled and supported by great, responsible leaders. If we want Agile leadership to succeed in 2020 and beyond, we as a community need to collaborate, evolve, and overcome these challenges, and no doubt many others that are thrown at us too. So finally, the journey for successful business outcomes. As I've mentioned many times this evening, Agile is that embraced philosophy and set of values brought about by having the right Agile leaders and way of working, supporting the people and culture. It isn't a methodology to implement within the existing management framework. It's all about working smarter rather than harder. It's not about doing more work in less time, or as some people wrongly believe, doing twice the work in half the time. It's all about generating more value and better outcomes with less work. You don't do Agile if you simply want the benefits alone. You have to be Agile. When you have the right Agile leaders and coaches, the teams deliver within a business model that generates value for the whole organization as well as the customers. As Agile leaders, our goal should not just simply be about implementing Agile. And if it is, we're in the wrong job. Our goal instead is about enabling successful business outcomes. All said and done, Agile leaders are the key to enabling people and organizations to have the courage, knowledge, and belief to be truly successful. My parting thoughts this evening. True Agile leaders embrace every aspect of agility. Set a clear vision that their team can embrace and own. Believe in their mission and live it on a daily basis. Build a culture of self-organizing teams. create an environment that allows Agile to flourish, focus on what really matters, delivering value, help their team members take care of the customers, and ultimately are awesome. So the challenges wrap up. As I mentioned at the start of the talk, the purpose was not necessarily to provide full-blown answers and solutions to all of these, but to share them with some of the workarounds that I've provided, which impact how successfully Agile leadership can happen in the workplace, which becomes a catalyst and opportunities for us all as an Agile community to solve together, especially if they're still being pervasive in our organization today. So this leads nicely on to the last page. Final question, and have your say. What is Agile leadership for you, and what are your Agile challenges? On screen, you will see a QR code and a short URL that will take you to a short 2-minute Agile survey, where you can answer this and a couple of other questions too. The outcome of this research is going to be a report of the big challenges that are still affecting Agile leaders and Agile adoptions within our organizations, nearly 20 years since the launch of the Agile Manifesto, and what we all need to do to come together to resolve them. The data is going to be predominantly from feedback here in the UK, but not limited to it. And especially my new friend from California, I hope you'll take part. It'll be published in a white paper that I'm going to be creating later in 2020. I hope I can come back at a future event and share all the findings from this and other conferences and meetups, leading on to further workshops, projects and collaborations with members of the community overcoming many of these challenges through Agile champions helping to provide and share the answers and workarounds and solutions to them, and allowing these ways of working, or WOWs, to simply become commonplace in organizations over the next decade, enabling greater business agility and responsible leadership to be as successful as possible. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. I'll put back the QR code. Back to Chantal.
Thank you, Giles. That was really, really interesting. And, you know, I'm thinking everyone might agree, it's a real eye-opener to actually realise it's actually not their fault. And I love how you actually put emphasis around actually anyone and everyone within that organisation is going to make things happen is actually considered a leader. So I would actually go beyond and say actually the team are also leaders as well. If you're knowing Agile, if you want to be Agile, if you want to work in an Agile way, you're going to have to be and actually adopt some form of leadership in order to make things happen. So I think that's a really fantastic thing that you said there. And yeah, Giles, I mean, you're so inspiring for me as well. And, you know, thanks to you, I'm actually getting chances to innovate as well. So I'm looking forward to actually working with you in the future.
I'm looking forward to it as well, and I hope we can collaborate and do what we've been planning for the last couple of weeks.
Exactly, and actually creating something around that leadership space to educate more leaders to realise that, look, command and control, actually, you're not in control when you're focusing on command and control type of leadership. In fact, what I can see, and what I've seen time and again, is that when you actually let go of that command and control, and you embrace yourself, you step into the world of Agile and you see what your teams are working on, and you go through each and every one of your departments, listen to their pains, listen to what their issues are, what you'll actually find is that you've got a lot more control because you've got a lot more transparency and better decisions get made as a result. So I think that's a really interesting statement that you made there.
I'm glad, and I agree. And I think a lot of the problem at that command and control level is that the middle management and senior middle management sort of believe they somehow have the authority, but that authority ultimately does still sit at the very top within the organization. And I think that's where a part of a lot of that friction, a lot of that anti-agile propaganda comes from, because it's the only voice they can actually have.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is there anyone else that wants to, you know, ask Giles some questions? You know, maybe we can just spare like 2 or 3 minutes to just answer some questions.
Giles, too many questions to start asking now, Giles, so we'll do it another time.
Giles, can you hear me?
No worries.
So
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, hi.
Right. Hello, hi. Yeah. So my question is that how do you integrate Agile into an organization that has a very strong PMO?
Yeah, great conversation. I actually only gave this on a coaching session yesterday to somebody who's working for a large energy company in Azerbaijan. Random, I know. For me, it's about making sure we're educating those people in that program space, trying to also make sure that the program team understand truly what a product is about as well in this space. I've actually had successes previously of changing the terminology or the acronym of PMO from Project Management Office to Product Management Office, and actually starting to see people realizing the value from doing product development and the successful business outcomes, rather than this need to suddenly have that control, bureaucracy, micromanagement of budgets, which ultimately cause so much friction with those agile teams who are trying to do things differently. Systemic coaching, for me, is where it happens. I don't think you can go in directly at a PMO level or a project management level or a program management level. I think you need to start at the top. You've got to get the buy-in of those senior executives, those leaders who are there, so that if they actually are going to be part of that same journey with you, they will be the ones who kind of also inform those sort of more bureaucratic PMO divisions to sort of say, guys, you've got to come on this same journey. I'm coming on it. The software teams are coming on it. The people management teams are coming on it. We're talking to finance in a different way. So you guys have got to sort of change and adapt and understand the values and the philosophy and the mindset as well. And I've actually seen program managers become product managers because of this type of transformation, where they have that product mindset and think about the value that's realized from that element, rather than thinking we've got an annual budget of X million pounds and we somehow now have to deliver from that. And of course, getting to 10 months towards that end of that delivery window, we haven't spent all the money, we've got to spend money, we haven't delivered anything, and that's where part of that sort of organizational friction comes from. So systemic coaching, I think, is where it starts. It has to start at the top. There are many ways and practices, probably just like Alistair, who I'd love to spend time answering his questions. You could spend days on this topic. I think a lot of people have to go into organizations as agile leaders and coaches to sort of help remove the friction, help sort of talk about the philosophy, get people into that mindset, so that when we actually start rolling these new ways of working out, we're not finding it, what we say, okay, that doesn't work currently in the current ways of doing things. But you know what? If we actually think about doing things slightly differently, we can leverage what you do awesomely with this new way of working and actually build a way of working that's fit for the organization.
So, Giles, thanks for that. So one of the problems that I had in my current roles was that they had a very strong PMO, and to overcome that, one of the first thing I did was actually to approach management, the CIO, the CTOs, and then so they came up with a completely new structure on product line as opposed to on project, where everything coming down from the portfolio division is actually broken down into programs and products, as opposed to like now, in the past, it used to be like project. Yeah. And then that way, the idea of a product owner start kicking in. And part of my coaching was actually how do we coach enterprise from beginning to end. And also to make that work, we focus entirely more on creating a framework. One of the framework was actually looking at what the PMO has currently and phasing in what you call a bimodal delivery framework, where during the prioritization and demand stages, they can make a determination which one is an agile project, which one is hybrid, and which one is. So we had to do that framework, and we had to get it approved and then actually sell it, because you have a lot of people working in the organization. They used to what you call a stable state, which is a PMO state. You see, but to begin to sell that agile mindset, they also need to know what they're working with. So that's one of the stuff that we did. And then the second phase was actually to now begin to pull people into the new structure. And then the agile coach part also kicks in, where you begin to train folks in terms of agility that the organization wants to achieve. So yeah, that's one of my experiences, and I thought it is always a great thing to start with something like structure in terms of having two structures with a framework that actually integrate those two and communicating that to the entire enterprise. I found that really useful, and it's made me successful up to this day as well.
I agree with a lot with that. I mean, even if you just start at systemic coaching, a lot of people in those senior leadership positions go, "We've got to fix the culture." It's somehow it's as if the culture is the only thing that actually matters. For me, fixing the culture is actually the wrong way to look at it and the wrong way to attack it. It's actually culture, and the change of culture and the improvements is actually a byproduct of two other things. Having people like yourself as those coaches and leaders in the organization, and bringing about the right ways of working, going through value stream mapping and other things like that, trying to work out where the value realization is. So leadership plus structure and all the processes that you just talked about equals creating that awesome way of working, that culture, and seeing the improvements. Now, I've got friends and colleagues I've worked with on this, tonight, and I know they'll agree. It's because of those two things that ultimately leads to the third.
That's lovely, Giles. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you there now because we've kind of gone over time, but that's fine. Guys, really, really lovely to have you all join us today. If you do have any other questions, you can always pop them into the meetup group place, and I'll be happy to pass those questions on to Giles, and he'll be happy to answer them. So just leave us with your email address. And we'll be happy to actually answer these questions, because I think we're really in a pressing time at the moment. Changing the way leaderships think is really imperative to actually the success of businesses today. And given the climate that we're in right now, quick thinking, fast decision making, and actually adding that human element is so important right now. So
I agree. There's also an email address there, which I can then obviously answer as well if people have questions.
Yeah,
I can run them past with Chital as well. So please do. That's why I've sort of left it up there for people to snapshot it. I'm very more than happy to help, have further conversations, engage with you guys. And genuinely, I want you guys to sort of keep an eye out for those future events. Once we've done the research from the survey, and the workshops and other things that we're going to be facilitating on all the things that Chital was just talking about.
Great, thank you, Giles. Thank you, Giles. That was a really, really powerful presentation, in my opinion, and I think it'd be really good to kind of hear you come on board again and join us another time. Guys, everyone, thank you for a lovely session, and thanks for joining us. And yeah, big round of applause for Giles.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.